Chapter 21, Modal Mixture. This is the first installment. This chapter presents a type of chromaticism in which scale degrees and harmonies that occur in one mode are borrowed from the parallel mode. The result brings remarkable color to the music and opens wide the harmonic possibilities. As you can see, this chapter is quite extensive, and we are starting now as we are approaching the end of the semester, and in order to do justice to all of the chapter, inevitably we will spill into the spring semester. But we will try to cover at least half, if not more, of the chapter. So modal mixture in particular, there is one direction in which events flow. Modal mixture is much more prevalent in the major mode. In this case we have C major, and as you can see here, the diatonic chords that belong to C major, the supertonic 2, the subdominant 4, and the medians 3 and 6. Modal mixture is about borrowing from the parallel minor, which is of course, C minor, and the harmonies that are unique to that minor mode. All of these, the 2 diminished 6, the 2 half diminished 7, and the lowercase 4 in particular, flowing in that direction to the major mode. All of these, of course, are predominant chords. And then later we will include other chords such as the scale degree 3 and scale degree 6 in the minor mode, which are both major triads, and as we import them they become flat 3 and flat 6. But that'll be a little bit later. And then there are other things that we will cover from the chapter. There's a stepwise descent, which is fascinating. We will cover that sooner or later. Plagal motions, and then other types of mixture, in some cases referred to as secondary mixture. But today, let's get started with some specific items. The music of the late 18th and early 19th centuries commonly employs a type of chromaticism that cannot be said to derive from applied functions or applied chords and or tonicization. Right? So the type of chromaticism we have been studying this semester is primarily in the form of modulation, applied chords, and tonicization. So, in fact, the chromaticism that we're talking about, modal mixture, often appears to be non-functional, a mere coloring of the melodic and harmonic surface of the music. We're going to listen to an example that we played in class already, but I'd like to go over it again, from Mascagni, and I'll let you finish reading this paragraph on your own. Feel free to pause the video at any moment, as we always do. Let's go on to the example. So this example is called A Casa Amici, Homeward Friends, from Cavalleria Rusticana, and the composer is Mascagni. It's written in the key of F major. I'll play it once and then we will discuss. Alright, so the example is clearly written in the key of F major, as we notice from the score. F major starts and ends in F major. Let's give a couple of Roman numerals here. capital 1 at the beginning, capital 1 at the end. However, even though the first page is all F major diatonic chords, second page starting with measure 11, we find some really interesting chords. For example, the F major tonic becomes an F minor triad. I'm not sure if you recall what we did in class, but we actually decided that rather than analyzing in the key of F major, we call all of this a tonicization of the key of A flat. And if you don't recall off the top of your head, I would strongly suggest that you pause the video and search for your class notes so that you can understand how the Roman numeral analysis works with this piece. So we ended up tonicizing A flat major as a new tonic, of course. And then, of course, the E flat that precedes it was actually a 5 in the key of A flat. And respectively, the D flat is obviously a 4, in first inversion is a 4/6, and the F minor triad ended up being a 6 chord. The F minor actually was a pivot chord. But regardless of whether or not we're tonicizing, these events are happening within a major mode piece, which is remarkable. A flat major ends up being called a scale degree flat 3. So we can talk about a tonicization of flat 3 in the key of F major. And then as we return to F major towards the end of the excerpt down here, right, we find a very commonly used chord in modal mixture in the Romantic generation. This chord is actually a 2 half diminished 4/3. The half diminished seventh chord, as we talked about once, it's a favorite structure for the Romantic composers, and the fact that it can resolve the bass, the D flat, resolves down by half step, creates a lot of tension. So the 2 half diminished 4/3, or the 2 half diminished 7 in general, is one of the most commonly used modal mixture predominants, as we will find out in future examples. Okay, so the excerpt, as we said, begins and ends in F major. A significant portion of the music behaves as though it were written in the key of F minor. This technique of borrowing harmonies from the parallel mode is what we refer to as modal mixture, or in some cases simply as mixture. We have already encountered 2 instances of modal mixture, even though we perhaps did not identify it as such. You might remember the Picardy third, if you look at the example here at the bottom of the page in the key of C minor, having a E natural at the end of the piece. This is typically something that happens at the very end of the piece, giving it a glimmer of light or hope. So instead of ending on a minor tonic, we end on a major tonic. We call it a Picardy third, and sometimes the Bacardi third. And a second instance arose through the use of the fully diminished 7th chord in the major mode, which of course also had scale degree flat 6 as the chordal 7th. You might recall a couple of examples that we did in class where we could expand the tonic with the 7 diminished 7th. The 7 diminished 7, as a matter of fact, is a nice substitute for the dominant 7th chord. As a matter of fact, when we learned the dominant 7th chords in all of the inversions, we compare them to 7 diminished 7th, and that's when we learned about this. It was sometime in the spring. Although harmonies may be borrowed from either the parallel major or minor, it is much more common for elements of the minor mode to be imported into the major mode. And that is what we established in class, and that's what we are going to keep here. So, the most commonly used modal mixture chords are, of course, the predominants, and that's what I want to focus on with this particular chart. The scale degree 6, if we go in order here from the summary of predominant harmonies, scale degree 6 is the least likely to undermine the integrity of the home key. If you think about C major, for example, C major has scale degrees 1, 3, and 5 as the tonic. Any of those gets compromised, then the tonic triad is going to suffer, and therefore not a good idea to substitute either scale degree 1, 3, or 5. Also, if you were to compromise scale degree 7, which is the leading tone, a lot of keys can be defined by the motion leading tone to scale degree 1, especially as a melodic line. So if we were to compromise scale degree 7 or leading tone to a flat 7, that would give us a very different type of sonority, which would also compromise the integrity of the home key. However, scale degree 6 is not part of any of those sonorities, and that's why it's actually okay to lower it. So scale degree 6 becomes flat 6, and flat 6 gives way to a new set of chords that we will commonly use in the major mode. Notice the use of the scale degree 2 becomes even though it says 2 diminished here, we know better, we're probably going to use it as a 2 diminished 6. We can also use the lowered scale degree 6 or flat 6 as part of the 2 half diminished 7 chord and all of its inversions. And then scale degree flat 6 is also going to color the subdominant triad. The capital 4 becomes a lowercase 4 because of that A flat, and those are very, very commonly used. The next example, which is drawn from the parallel minor, alters the most commonly used predominants 2, 2, 7, and 4. And I want to go to that example before I finish reading this little paragraph, because it's always a good idea to start with the music. We can always come back to the explanation. One thing to keep in mind, though, is the example we're about to feature is a nice example of how modal mixture can affect the melody. So keep in mind the melody here, and notice how, before we even play it, we have a scale degree flat 6 as part of the melodic line. This is a really beautiful song by Schumann called Ich grolle nicht, which means I bear no grudge, and that would be Old English. In our contemporary English, it would be like I am not mad at you, or I am not angry, or something like that. In any case, it's in the key of C major, and see if we can listen to the example once. Let's repeat it again. Okay, and it's a shame that we only get this portion, because the rest of the song is absolutely beautiful. If you're not familiar with Dichterliebe, by all means put it on your to-do list that you will listen to the whole song cycle, Opus 48 from Schumann. It's absolutely mesmerizingly beautiful. Okay, so you notice the melodic line in the major mode. What would it sound like if we were to play? Right, in the major mode. Notice that the pitch A flat, or scale degree 6, or scale degree lowered 6, happens to coincide with the word heart. That is not just a coincidence. I think this is actually very carefully planned. And notice the difference if I play it the way it's written with the A flat, not the A natural. And when the heart breaks, a heart breaking is actually much more beautifully portrayed, I think, with the A flat. And the fact that there's a half step between A flat and G makes it a little bit more compelling. The A natural, first of all, the quality of the chord, the D minor 7, is not nearly as enticing and as deep as the 2 half diminished 7. In some ways it's much more romantic, and that's one of the qualities that the Romantic generation immediately identified from that 7th structure, and that's why they use it so much. So that is one particularly good use of not only the 2 half diminished 7th chord, but also an instance of modal mixture coloring the melodic line. All right. Modal mixture is also going to affect the good old EPMs. You might recall the term EPM, embedded phrase model, and there are some that we have already studied. Let's see if we play through them. Example 21.4 from left to right. I'm playing them, of course, in C major with no alterations for right now. So C major, 1, 2, 6, 5, 5, 4, 2, and 1, 6. If I apply mixture now, the A flat and the alto, it's a very different type of EPM now that the A flat, scale degree flat 6, has entered the arena. The second progression in the middle is one that you will recognize from Bach, the Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 1. Without the mixture, it would sound like this. As a matter of fact, to this one we ended up adding a 9/8 suspension on the last chord. Check it out. A suspension on the tenor between the last 2 chords. Now with mixture. Again, the second chord. And the flat 6 resolving to 5 by half step. The last one is not super common, but I'll play it. Number 3, I'll play it. Now that we are going to start using these modal mixture EPMs, I will ask you to recall all of these for your final examination. If you like the third one, you can use it. If not, I would suggest that you pick either 1 or 2. They're much more commonly used. Another important page from the chapter, the voice leading rules for modal mixture harmonies. This is a page that we're going to continue to go back to, so I would mark it carefully from your textbook. And I will let you take a look at these rules. One in particular, by the way, notice that these rules are simply amplified from our knowledge of the voice leading that was particular to the use of applied chords. So applied chords are chromatic chords, just like modal mixture harmonies. And so these modal mixture rules are an outgrowth of stuff that we have already studied. So there's nothing totally new here. Perhaps the most common rule, and one that I'm going to put an asterisk next to, is this one right here. And this particular rule says, in other words, to keep the chromaticism Do you remember the rest of this particular rule? Keep the chromaticism in the what? Same voice. I can hear some of you guys volunteering that answer. I'm sure most of you got this or guessed it correctly, in the same voice. Something that we did a lot with the applied chords. So when you introduced a C sharp, for example, in a key that otherwise is as a C natural, you have to continue that melodic line C to C sharp to D, and not switch voices, because you create these really awkward relations that we described in one of the videos actually earlier this semester. Okay, so this is probably good enough for now, and this should allow you to complete the assignment that is due Wednesday. I hope you received it. It is, of course, on Canvas, and this particular video should help you continue and finish the assignment. I look forward to seeing it Wednesday. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me.